And welcome to this next edition of the Broad and Pattison podcast. For Alex Ozer, I'm your host, Hunter Walsh, and we've got a lot of stuff to tackle this week. How you feeling?
Doing great. How you doing?
Doing good. We're going to start out with this week in history.
So, in 1925, the 20th Davis World Cup happened. USA beats France in Philadelphia. We're also going to be talking about our recap on Philadelphia versus Washington, our preview of Philadelphia versus Atlanta, the last 5 Phillies games, and Mike Scott.
Yeah, Mike Scott. That's where do we even start with that? Well, we don't have to worry about starting with that yet, because obviously we're gonna start out here with Washington versus the Eagles. The studio's coming together, isn't it?
Yeah, it's coming along pretty nice.
We've been blood, sweat, and tears have come into the studio, haven't they?
Yeah, we're really renovating this place.
Without further ado, let's dive into this Redskins game. What are your initial thoughts? The Eagles beat the Redskins 32-27. If you're living under a rock,
It started off 17-0, which is or 0-17.
Yeah,
which was
for the Eagles. They were losing 17-0 at one point. Halftime was 20-7, which obviously is terrible.
Yep.
Especially if you're the Eagles. The Redskins were flying high. Mm-hmm. They were
pun intended.
Yes, pun intended. Case Keenum was 30 for 44, which surprised me. He had 44 passing attempts, and with the backfield that the Redskins have, they have AP, who didn't even suit up for the game, which, yeah, I thought was a little strange. Maybe there's something going on behind the scenes there. Darius Geis had 10 carries, and Chris Thompson with 3. Darius Geis had 10 carries for 18 yards. His longest run was 5 yards. This rushing game for the Redskins was non-existent. 13 total carries, 28 yards, an average of just over 2 yards a carry.
Yeah, they really killed us in the air, though, with Case Keenum having the 4th most passing yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Third or fourth? Something
third
like that.
Or 4th, somewhere like that. And that's the only reason they stayed in the game.
But I will say, Case Keenum had a QBR of 73.5.
Not good for people who don't know.
Yeah, that's not good. Until you get to 110. 110 and above is good. Mm-hmm. Anything below that is not. So to have 73.5, he had 14 incompletions. He didn't have any interceptions, though. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, as I mentioned. 380 yards.
It's very unusual to see a quarterback with under a 70 rating, or about a 70 rating, with no interceptions. Normally
and almost 400 yards. You don't see that very often.
On paper, that sounds great.
On paper, yeah. But then you look at the QBR, it's
percentage.
Maybe it wasn't as great as it was, and the completion percentage obviously wasn't even there. But he's sacked once off of 10 hits, which kind of surprised me as I'm looking at the box score here, because I could have sworn
that we got more sacks?
That Fletch and Jernigan had a sack. Right? Don't you remember that, don't you? Don't you remember Fletch and Jernigan both getting a sack? Or is that just me?
Probably just you. You're weird.
Okay, anyway. We'll talk about the Eagles in a second. Obviously, plenty to talk about. But I want to look at the Redskins receiving core in this game.
Speed.
They did. They did. They had a lot of speed. Obviously, the Eagles had the edge there. We'll get to that in a second. Obviously, as I mentioned, 30 completions on Case Keenum's part, 30 receptions. 69 yards was the longest. That was a Terry McLaurin, the rookie. Terry McLaurin pass. It was mostly yards after the catch. That was the longest play in the game. But Terry McLaurin, the rookie, has his debut. 5 receptions for 125 yards. A touchdown.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he's top 5 in the speeds for just ball carriers.
He was 5th, yes. 125 yards.
For a rookie.
For a rookie, and that's quite the day.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of rookies actually did shine out. The Jaguars backup, I forget what his name was.
Marquise Brown was a great receiver.
Marquise Brown, Hollywood, in Baltimore there was great. I'm trying to think. Josh Jacobs had a good week. We'll talk about that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Thompson had 7 receptions. He led the Redskins in receptions. He had 68 yards and the longest of 18. It sucks for the Eagles secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so concerned.
They were getting beat.
Yeah, by Terry McLaurin, Chris Thompson, a running back. Vernon Davis, who's what, 93?
94.
Paul Richardson.
Take.
Paul Richardson, obviously, it was there last year. Trey Quinn. Darius Geis had 3 receptions for 20 yards.
He didn't even get that much playing time, did he? I'm pretty sure I looked at some statistics. I can't talk. Some statistics. And
He only had
about
13 touches in the whole game.
For your number 1 running back, supposedly.
Come on. I mean, okay. I know Jay Gruden's on the hot seat. And Case Keenum has the hot hand in this game. But the fact that Darius Geis looked good in the beginning of the game. Darius Geis only gets 10 rushes from the line of scrimmage, and you give Case Keenum 44 pass attempts.
Something's off here.
45 because of the sack. I mean, if you're on the hot seat, that's not something you do. At all. Like, that's not smart.
Mm-hmm.
At all.
He's fun right now, isn't he?
I'm sure he is. So now let's get to the Eagles. As we mentioned, down 17-0 at one point.
Having a great rally to make a comeback.
They did. So first quarter was 10-0. It wasn't looking good. We open up the second quarter. The Redskins have the ball, and it was a 70-yard catch and run from Keenum to McLaurin. That was probably our lowest point of the game.
I predicted that there was going to be a pick 6 on the play. I was kind of right about the touchdown part. Not a pick, though.
Not the team. The team was wrong.
Yeah.
So now it's 17-0. I'm frustrated. My whole house is frustrated. I'm sure it was the same around the Delaware Valley.
I knew that we started off cold, and I know that a lot of games we start off cold, especially from the last 2-3 years. But then we normally heat back up. But it's never really been like this. 17-0 in the first half.
For the Eagles, the last couple of years, it's always been a tale of two halves. And whether that's the Eagles jumping ahead 17-0 against the Panthers and losing 21-17, or that's getting down 17-0 to the Redskins and winning 32-27.
The Redskins of all teams.
The Redskins.
They're bottom 5.
I actually had the Redskins picked to lose the division completely. 4th place. I have the Giants better than them because I have the Redskins at 5-11. I have the Giants at 7-9. Anyway, I want to talk about, for the Eagles, first of all, I want to talk about Doug Peterson. And I think this was kind of expected. I was not pleased in either half with Doug Peterson. One play that stuck out to me, it's 3rd down. Or was it 2nd down?
I'm not sure.
No, it was 2nd down. It was 2nd down in inches. Okay? At the 3rd yard line. Okay? Just give it to Jordan Howard, right? Put it right in. Get a touchdown. Again, this is when we were down 17-0.
Or we do something very risky and very stupid.
We give it to Miles Sanders on a pitch. Out to the right side. He gets tackled 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Now it's 3rd and 3. Incompletion. Then you go for it on 4th down. Then you don't get the points. It's still 17-0. What was he doing?
Taking a 3-0 would be better than taking a 7-0 there with, the guaranteed 3 points. That brings us a little bit of momentum.
Absolutely.
We know what we're doing.
Absolutely. That is absolutely what I was thinking. Give us those points. Give us some momentum. Mm-hmm. Get a 3 and out. Just get a stop on the defensive end. Then score a touchdown. Now it's 17-10. Now it's only a 1-score game. right? Going into the half. But I was thinking Darren Sproles got a lion's share of the touches today. He got 20 touches, 4 punt returns, 7 receptions, and 9 carries.
So I was looking at some statistics a little bit earlier. He might have still can't talk. Some statistics. And I'm pretty sure he had the most field percentage of any of our running backs, more than Miles Sanders, more than Jordan Howard, at about like 40%.
Completely right. Jordan Howard got 6 carries. He only had 3 less yards than Darren.
I think there's something.
And their longest
outlier here.
Their longest was both 17 yards. Jordan Howard proved to the coaching staff in this game that he is your starting running back. We all know this. Until Miles Sanders gets that experience, Jordan Howard is your starting running back by a mile. The fact that Darren Sproles got 20, count them, 20
He's not even a
touches.
very good running back. He's a receiving back.
He's a receiving back. He's a kick returner.
He's a
The way that
special
this team is built, he's a kick returner. That is his role. And you give him the lion's share of the opportunities in the backfield.
That'd be something stupid like the Lions would do. We're not the Lions, right?
We're not the Lions. Miles Sanders got the most carries out of everyone. And those of you who aren't familiar, a touch is different than a carry. So a touch is any time a player touches the ball. A carry is any time a player rushes the ball. Miles Sanders got 11 carries, averaged just over 2 yards to gain.
It's not great.
It's not great.
So, anyways, about the game, how do you feel total? Just your thoughts about it?
I'm concerned.
Thoughts?
I'm very concerned because this schedule is going to get tough. We have
Seahawks, Patriots.
We have about a 6-7 game stretch of playoff teams. We can't have first halves like this. Because if the Redskins are going to put 17 on us, 20 on us...
Imagine what the damn Falcons would do.
Exactly. With that receiving core that Atlanta has...
Which we'll get to in a minute.
Yes, we will get to in a minute. It has to be fixed. Definitely has to be fixed. Carson Wentz in this game... In the first half, he was 12 for 19 with, I don't know the exact stats, but just under 100 yards. He had a touchdown, which was the one to Deshaun, which we'll talk about in a second. But total in this game, he was 28 for 39, 313 yards, an average of 8 yards per attempt. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 1 sack to no other hits. 94 was his QBR. How do you feel about Carson's first game back?
I feel that it's a great sign that if he has a second half like that, even though it's only against a terrible Redskins defense, if he can have a second half like that, he could probably have a second half like that against any team.
Oh yeah, and his QBR, which is kind of our favorite quarterback stat, which you'll see, you'll figure that out in the rest of the podcast episodes. But he had a 147.3 QBR in the second half.
That's almost perfect.
I
think that might be about 10 away.
On third downs, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I want to say he was 12 for 13 for
maybe
39 yards, something like that.
No, 12 for 13.
12 for 13 on third downs.
Yeah.
With 139.
Yeah, 139 yards.
That's what I meant. With a perfect QBR. A perfect QBR. 158.3 is the perfect QBR for those of you who don't know. But third downs was the Eagles' strong suit in this game, right?
Which isn't a good thing that we get to third down,
Right.
but we do produce on third down.
2 of our touchdowns were both on third downs. 3rd and 10, as a matter of fact. Which, on that topic, let's get into the story of this game. Number 10 is back in Philadelphia. What a return from Mr. Deshaun Jackson.
Had himself a hell of a game, too.
Yes, he did. And I had him on my bench in fantasy. R.I.P. me.
Told you he was a weirdo.
I started Odell and D.D. Westbrook over him.
This guy's a walking L.
I know. 8 receptions, 154 yards, an average of 20 yards per game, 2 touchdowns.
He's doing that in his 30s.
He's 32. He was the 2nd fastest player in the NFL this week. And he's 32 years old. This guy is amazing.
That's consistency right there.
Yeah, it is. Other receivers, Zach Ertz had himself a bit of a game, you'd say. 5 receptions, 54 yards.
Not bad.
11 yards per game.
Not Zach Ertz.
Not what we've seen from Zach Ertz. Alshon Jeffrey had 5 receptions as well, 49 yards, which is an average of 10 yards per game. 1 touchdown. He had that.
Great catch and great.
He had
Carson Wentz.
yeah. It was kind of a sidearm. He was on the run. He was out of the pocket.
For sure, was back in the end zone.
Yeah. Between two cornerbacks. It was a great throw. But Alshon Jeffrey also has his first career rushing touchdown.
Which is pretty strange.
It was that lateral from Carson that should have been a forward pass, which would have definitely improved Carson's numbers. Let's see. Miles Sanders had himself a reception for 2 yards. Jordan Howard had 2 for 11. Nelson Aguilar had only 2 for 11. What do you think about that? 2 receptions, 11 yards for Nelly.
I think it's just that we're using our great weapons a lot.
We have a very open offense, to put it
a very
lightly.
explosive offense. And
Exactly.
I think that's what'll drive the team this season.
Yeah, I think it'll be a big help. It's something that Carson hasn't had at his disposal. Now let's look at our defense, as a matter of fact. Nigel Bradham had 5 solo tackles. We had passes defended. Ronald Darby had 2. Vontae Maddox had 1. Russell Douglas had 1. Sidney Jones had 1. Fletcher Cox had 1. I don't remember that one. Quarterback hits, no surprise. Fletcher Cox had 2. But this is... I want to kind of talk about something that kind of went unnoticed. Something that people aren't really talking about. Derek Barnett had himself a pretty quiet game. You didn't really hear his name called a lot. But he had 3 quarterback hits.
And I'm pretty sure it was about 10 quote-unquote quarterback pressures via the NFL.
Yeah,
or
via
ESPN.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
He had 5 tackles, 3 solo, which is great. He had a tackle for loss.
Did you see that tackle on the counter play where he ran across the entire field basically?
Yes, I did. I did see that. Derek Barnett is a beast. He has so much potential. I love it.
The speed.
If he can stay healthy, he's going to be good.
Any more notes about the defense?
Obviously, yes. But I want to talk more about them when we get into our review of the Atlanta game. So let's transition now over to Citizens Bank Park. We're going to talk about the last week of Phillies games. On Saturday, the Phillies shut out the Mets 5-0. Good game. Then we come out, we battle with the Mets. We win 10-7 in an offensive game. Now we're coming home. We're getting home from New York, and we have to face Atlanta, the division-leading Braves. Okay? We have 4 games set with them. We played 3 so far. In the first game, Aaron Nola got absolutely rocked. And we lost 7-2. In the second game, we did not get rocked. Jason Vargas was pitching. We won 6-5. The game winner ended up being a Corey Dickerson solo shot. I want to shine a spotlight right now on Scott Kingery's home run on Tuesday. So, the Braves are so cocky. They are so goddamn cocky.
Makes sense that they're one of the best in the league.
They are. Look, they're the second best in the National League. I'll give them credit. Okay, they have a lot of great players. They have great coaches. They got a great farm system. You name it, they're great at it. They could win 100 games this year. But they are just way too cocky to be able to win this division. I cannot wait until the Phillies win 100 games next year, win the division, and win the goddamn World Series.
You said that last year.
We said that, but look, this is different. Because now we know what these players are made of. We saw what Andrew McCutchen did in the beginning of the year.
Before he got injured.
He was really good. Andrew McCutchen was really good. He had a .274 batting average with 10 home runs and 22 RBIs. That's good for how long he played. Just over 50 starts. So, back to Scott Kingery's home run. So, he hits it, and it looks like it's going to go into the shrubbery in center field. Ronald Acuna Jr., who won the Rookie of the Year last year, and is pretty much the star of the Atlanta Braves, is playing center field. He's patrolling the area, and Scott Kingery hits it to the shrubbery. Ronald Acuna is kind of hovering on the warning track, puts his glove up, and he catches it. Right? So then he starts to celebrate. And this hand does not touch the ball. And his glove goes behind his back, and the ball pops out. Kingery's rounding second.
In the base. Or in the park.
He's rounding second. Acuna's asking for time. Because he's saying it was on the transition. No, asshole. You were celebrating. And Kingery is a very smart player. He's been in the league just as long as you have. He's calling for a timeout. He's going for the ball. Kingery is going to third. Now he's rounding third. Acuna's throw to the plate will be...
short.
And Kingery was safe at the plate. That was a really feel-good moment because it was a tie ball game. And I kind of saw the alert on my phone because I was watching America's Got Talent. I saw the alert on my phone. It said, Kingery homered to center, 383 feet. But I was like, wait a minute. Isn't center field 404 to the wall? And I was like, I had to watch it. I was like, what did this home run look like?
And at first you're probably like, no, he just caught it. What?
Yeah.
And then
he starts to celebrate, and it goes over there. And the funniest part was that he was calling for a timeout. That was awesome. Because he didn't think that happens in baseball, but it does. That's something. He's always compared to Mike Trout. Mike Trout won't do that shit. Now let's go to yesterday, Wednesday. We are recording this on Thursday. It will be released tomorrow, Friday. But the last game the Phillies played, it was really disappointing. Zach Eflin versus Dallas Keuchel last night. Eflin gives up 3 runs. Only one of them were earned. You start out, you got 2 outs. This is an easy inning, right? 2 outs, get the last one, go to the next inning.
Don't die.
So then, there's an error.
What does he do?
There's an error. Gene Segura can't handle it. Throws it offline to Rhys Hoskins at first. Not good. But hey, it's just one man on, right?
It's fine.
So then Eflin walks the next guy. Okay, now you got runners at first and second.
It's not looking that great anymore.
So these are unearned runners. Okay?
Neither.
Neither of them are earned.
One of them in scoring position.
So here we go. Crushes it to left field. It's 3-0.
We went from...
It was 0-0. We're still in this. It's 4th inning.
Yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine.
3-0. Blink of an eye. 2 unearned runs. Can't happen. The Segura error he's had a lot this year. He's not a great shortstop on the defensive side. Scott Kingery grounded into a fielder's choice, which scored Corey Dickerson. And the Phillies got 1 back. But they still lost 3-1. But what is horrible about this game is how bad the front office looked about 30 minutes afterwards. There were reporters in the Atlanta locker room speaking to Dallas Keuchel. And Dallas said, I think the front office is second-guessing themselves right now. I know I would. So obviously, as a Philadelphia Phillies fan, I hear that. And that means that Matt Klentak didn't go after Keuchel in free agency. And the Braves ended up with him. He was great last night. Keuchel had his stuff last night. He didn't allow a hit until pretty late in the ballgame.
Yeah, for sure it was only 3, maybe 5 hits in the entire game.
Yeah, I think it was 3. I think you were right. But should we believe that? And if so, that makes Matt Klentak look really, really bad. I was listening to a radio show this morning, and a caller came in and they said, the front office should be fired. Everyone in the front office, top to bottom, get them out of here. And I'm just thinking to myself, is this really what these Phillies fans have come to? This front office had the biggest offseason in MLB history. They are the first...
Harper, just to name 2.
They're the first front office in MLB history to sign 5 All-Stars from the former year that offseason. You signed Andrew McCutchen in December. You signed David Robertson a couple weeks later. You trade for Gene Segura. You gave up Carlos Santana and J.P. Crawford.
This is fine. Everything's fine.
And then you trade for JT Realmuto. And you give up a top 10 prospect for this guy. And you give up Jorge Alfaro. So you give up Jorge Alfaro and Sixto Sanchez, who was a top 10 prospect in the MLB. A pitcher. You gave up a lot to get these 4 guys alone. And then we get on to February 28th.
The news.
The day the Phillies organization changed forever. When the Phillies signed what at the time was the largest contract in sports history.
Then he got
Bryce Harper got $330 million guaranteed dollars. But
how do you even respond to that?
With all of this, the front office had the greatest offseason in MLB history. And they can't control injuries. You know, Bryce Harper underperformed in the beginning of the year. They can't control that. They just know that they're getting all-stars. They're getting guys that can produce. They're getting the best catcher in baseball, 2 former MVPs, a former reliever of the year, and Gene Segura.
And Gene Segura.
Who hasn't really won anything, but obviously he's a very, very good piece in this lineup.
But that's what makes this team disappointing.
The fact that they signed 5 All-Stars and only have, how many ever win? 78? Something like that.
Yeah, probably.
76, 77, something like that. You know what I mean.
Probably out of range for a wild card, depending on what happens.
They are 2 games back from the Cubs for the second wild card spot. Just behind the Brewers, who we'll get to in a second. They have some breaking news out in Milwaukee. But I know I went on a rant last week for the Phillies.
Doing it again.
I am doing it again. But this front office does not need to change. I have confidence in them. The only thing I worry about with the front office They don't prioritize pitching. They have this sort of Moneyball approach where they need hitters. Hitters, hitters, and hitters. Get on base, hit home runs, and you're good. But you need pitching. You can't give up bases, and you can't give up home runs.
You're not going to always get those, 5+ run games.
Right,
Sometimes
exactly.
It's gonna be one of those slower games. And
Exactly. And you need a good pitcher.
Yeah,
If
you need a good
your
fielder.
offense is going to be slow, like we've definitely seen it be this year, you have to have good pitching. And this year, this offseason, this is probably the best pitching free agent class I've ever seen.
How many have you seen?
Before. But if I'm looking back on former free agent classes, Garrett Cole, right? All these pitchers, Dallas Keuchel, all these pitchers are just out there for the take. All you got to do is pay the money. Sign the
Did that with
contract.
Bryce Harper.
Do I have to do this every week with the Phillies? God, I hope
Yep.
not. I hope I don't have to do this next year.
You're going to have to. You already know this.
I better not be able to.
I'm a goddamn magician.
Now let's transition into Mike Scott. So I want to look at my my co-host here. What do you think about this whole Mike Scott situation?
I feel like it's kind of funny because, he's getting into all these things. He's wearing a Redskins jersey. That's where he's wrong. Like, is he sane for wearing a Redskins jersey?
The Sixers, I think this is worth mentioning. The Sixers do not, I repeat, do not plan on disciplining Mike, but we still have no word from the NBA.
They control all.
I take Scott's side here. If you watch the video, there's microphone guy and his son. They're at a tailgate. They are clearly drunk. Okay? They are clearly drunk. They're yelling profanity, obviously. They're yelling racial slurs. And most importantly, they said, "Yo, boy, Sean's in the grave." This does not make us look good.
Welcome to Philadelphia.
As Eagles fans, this is embarrassing. I know these guys were intoxicated, but that's not an excuse. Okay? They just better hope that Mike Scott does not get suspended by the NBA because he will definitely hear it out. Trust me. Microphone guy and his son will definitely hear it out. I don't want to talk anymore about that,
That's
but
just one small portion.
I just wanted to put that in there, make sure my 2 cents was said. We have a game this Sunday, don't we?
Yeah.
We have a game. The Eagles are heading down to Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz,
Yes,
not bank.
Mercedes-Benz.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium in
Most
Atlanta
luxurious
to
stadiums
face the Falcons.
have Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and
I heard some reports that it's looking like a 50-50 fan base right now in Atlanta, which is great. 50% of the fans in Mercedes-Benz Stadium will be Eagles fans. Or that's the anticipation anyway.
that kind of kills the home field advantage, really.
Absolutely. That's what we like to see in these road games, don't we? It's Sunday Night Football on NBC, which, yes, means Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth.
But how do you feel about the matchup this week? First of all, who do you think is going to win, and who do you think has the upper hand?
I'd say the Eagles. I'm going to go 40-35. This is going to be a shootout. This is going to very well be a shootout because neither defense is
Knows what they're
capable.
doing.
Neither defense is capable of handling the opposite offense. I want to show you some stats that I thought were interesting in the Vikings Falcons game last week in Minnesota.
Where Minnesota blew them out till the end.
Minnesota won by 16. Okay.
And they were leading by over 20 for majority of the game.
Time of possession was 52-48. Which scares me. The Falcons only scored 12 points and had the ball for 30 minutes. Does that like intimidate you at all?
I mean,
Because what if the Falcons get a lead?
and
You
then
know,
they just keep on.
They're going to dominate time of possession.
It's gonna fly by way too fast. Like,
Absolutely.
the defense needs to just stand up on third down and
Absolutely.
play for the next down, and just double cover Julio Jones.
I also
Keep that in mind.
want to say that, yes, the Falcons did only score 12 points, but the Falcons have, I'd say, aside from the Patriots, if all this Antonio Brown stuff, clears out. Besides the Patriots, the Falcons have the second best wide receiver core in the league. Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, and of course, number 11. But
Julio Jones.
the Vikings have arguably the best secondary in the NFC.
And one of the best defenses.
One of the best defenses as well. They have Xavier Rhodes and Harrison Smith, just to name a few in that secondary. Those are two perennial Pro Bowlers.
So, yeah, how do you think that the defense is going to fare up with this one? Do you think it's going to be a killer the entire time? Do you think that...
I think it's just going to be touchdown after touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. I think it really comes down to who scores the field goal first. I think that's who loses. You got to just score touchdowns. You got to score a lot of points. And I think nobody in Atlanta's secondary is fast enough to keep up with number 10. And I'd say...
Is anybody in the NFL, though?
No. No. Maybe like an A.J. Boye, but... the Eagles have the edge in a lot of categories. But it's just the amount of talent that the Falcons have at every position. They have a former MVP under center. They don't have a great O-line, which I love.
Because you know who's going to eat?
Fletch.
Derek Barnett.
Derek Barnett, you're calling for a big game from '96.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like that we have mixed views on this.
That's interesting. That is
Do you
interesting.
think he could?
I think he could. 2 sacks. How about that? 2 sacks for '96.
Seems plausible.
Um,
Max Unger is one of the better centers in the league. I feel like if they go one-on-one with Fletch is still going to do good.
they're probably going to double team him.
Yeah.
For sure. Brandon Graham could have a big game. You just got to put pressure. I think that's something that we didn't really see in that Washington game. And if you put pressure on the quarterback, the secondary doesn't have to do their job as well. So if we have a terrible secondary, okay, Matt Ryan doesn't have the quickest arm in the league, okay, to put it lightly. So I'm just saying, there's a pretty good possibility that if you get pressure, the results will show in the secondary. The results that you want to see.
So how do you fare up with the Eagles offense versus the Redskins defense? The Falcons defense just as a whole.
I think we're going to kill them. I think the Falcons are going to kill the Eagles defense, and I think that the Eagles are going to kill the Falcons defense.
It's going to be a fantasy league.
Oh my God,
game.
Fantasy fans are going to kill for this game. This is going to be the best Sunday Night Football game of the year. I'm calling it right now.
2 potential Super Bowl teams, in my eyes, facing the Falcons have a chance. You know why they were?
Are they better than LA though?
No.
Yeah. So they're not a top 3 team in the NFC.
I just said potential.
So I can't see them really having those results. You don't have to stop Julio to have success on defense. You only have to make sure that the other receivers don't see as much receptions. Because if Matt Ryan keeps going to Julio, and then one time, maybe, he's double teamed.
Yep.
With like Malcolm and Sidney Jones, just a random matchup there.
Mm-hmm.
The other guys aren't going to really know what to do.
Yeah.
Because
Calvin Ridley's still good.
Because let's say it's in the third quarter. They're feeding off of Julio. Mohamed Sanu has 2 receptions at this point. Calvin Ridley has 1. Well, if Julio is getting double teams by 2 decent, at the most, cornerbacks, Matt Ryan's not going to be so confident
in Julio
with Mohamed Sanu or Calvin Ridley. Maybe he'll throw to Julio. What happens in that case?
Maybe a pick.
A pick. So I think that's kind of what Jim Schwartz has to look at. Knowing that Jim Schwartz isn't big on the blitz. If you can get man coverage a lot. Because I think that's what we saw in the Redskins game. There was so much zone. So much deep zone. We haven't got wide open. You know? And we were so far away from them that when we had gotten to them, the tackles weren't so easy. You know? Because now you're fatigued. You're running over, right? If man-to-man coverage is key in this game. I want to see a lot more of that going forward.
Do you feel that special teams will play a role in this game?
I don't.
Same old.
No, I think it'll be, just Darren Sproles, Corey Clement, turning them.
Same stuff.
I think maybe if it's 31-31, with 6 seconds left, if someone's gonna return a punt, it should be Deshaun.
Same.
After
a great comeback. That's enough of that.
We're still living off of that, aren't we? 9 years later.
Weirdos. Isn't that weird?
And we talked about the Cowboys fans living off of 1996. Jesus.
So anything else to add to this?
I don't think so. I just think we all know that this is going to be a shootout.
Yeah.
It's going to be offense versus offense. It's not going to be offense versus defense in this game because I don't think either defense matches up with either offense. So I want to start a new segment here. I want to do my personal power rankings. So Alex here is going to give his personal NFL power rankings, and I'm going to give my personal MLB power rankings, since those are the two current leagues right now. So we're going to go from 10 and make our way up. So, Alex, you're going to go first. Take it away.
For my personal power rankings, I'm going to have the Packers at 10. So, for my power rankings here, I'm going to have the Packers at 10, the Cowboys at 9, the Ravens at 8, the Seahawks at 7, the Vikings at 6, the Saints at 5, the Eagles at 4, and then Chiefs 3, Rams 2, and who could have guessed the Patriots are number 1 again.
So you have us really over New Orleans.
Yeah.
Work through your process with that. Your thought process.
I just feel that I'm going to be working based mainly off of the second half of the Eagles because they looked great.
That's their true colors. Because I think that first half was really the starters preseason.
Yeah. And the Saints barely winning to a Texans. DeAndre Hopkins dropped a couple passes. He still had a great game, I'm pretty sure, maybe over 100 yards. But you lost to a Texans team without Jadeveon and without, I'm pretty sure, Lamar Miller.
Carlos Hyde was the running back.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde was their starting running back, who might not be a starting running back.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
A little late in his career for that.
The Patriots are at 1 because without Antonio Brown,
they
killed
out the Steelers.
Yeah, it got ugly. The Rams here at 2. I just feel like they had a bit of a sloppy game against the Panthers? Yes, correct. The Panthers.
I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. He hit the Cowboys pretty low. 8?
Yes, I'm pretty sure at 8 or 9.
8? I guess that's just because they were playing the Giants.
Yeah.
You can't ignore Dak Prescott, though.
Yeah, he had a great game. I'm pretty sure. He had he was the second quarterback with 158. Yep, 150.
Yeah, because Lamar, obviously.
Lamar. Lamar's a god.
Yeah, Lamar is a god.
Good for a running back.
All right, so we're going to go into my MLB power rankings right now since the MLB is active. We're getting into the playoffs here. We're going into the postseason. So.
Phillies probably out of top 10.
Yeah, the Phillies, my 30-team power rankings, I had the Phillies at 15. So starting out with 10 here, I'm going to go with the Oakland Athletics. They've turned it on at the right time. They own the second wild card spot right now. Obviously, they're not going to catch the Houston Astros because they're just on another level. But I'm loving what they're doing out in Oakland right now. They're still a pretty underrated team, and probably no one considered them an AL contender. But
they're up there.
They are up there.
They exist.
At 9, I'm going to say the Cleveland Indians. They are technically on the outside looking in, obviously the Twins. But they're in a three-way fight right now for the AL's 2 wildcard spots with the Rays, the Athletics, and themselves. I can see the Indians possibly making a playoff push here. At 8, I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Rays. As I mentioned, they do own the first wildcard spot as we're recording this. Obviously, second to the Yankees right now in the AL East. But if they were to win a wild card game, they could possibly change the look of this ALDS against New York. They need to still win the wild card game, though. Something that's easier said than done. At 7, I'm going to go with the Washington Nationals. As much as it hurts me to say it, I still think Washington has higher upside in October than 7.
And they've been succeeding even without our Harper.
They're not going to win the division, okay? They are 7 games at least. I don't know the exact standings right now, but they're 7 games below the Braves with just about 15 games left. They're not going to catch Atlanta, but they do own the first wild card spot in the NL right now. I think the Nationals are more talented roster than the Braves, but it was premature to rank them ahead of Atlanta in the last update. The Nationals are good. The Nationals are really good. They can make a push in the divisional series if they were to win that wild card game. Same thing with the Rays, though. It's easier said than done. At 6, I'm going to go with the St. Louis Cardinals. They are in a 2-man race right now for the NL Central with the Cubs. It's fun watching these teams go at it because right now the Brewers are kind of out of it with the Christian Yelich injury. But the Cardinals are getting hot at the right time, and it's fun to see that happen. At 5, again, hate to say it, the Atlanta Braves make the top 5 for me. As mentioned when I was talking about the Nationals, the Braves should have been ahead of Washington all along. It takes a big man to admit when he's wrong. And I am that man. I thought the Phillies were going to win this division by a landslide just because of the talent. The Phillies are the most talented team in the division, but they just don't mesh. At 4, I'm going to go with my second favorite team in the MLB. The team I'm going to root for in the postseason. The Minnesota Twins. A 36-run lead in run differential over anyone below them in these rankings, which is spectacular. The Twins are in postseason preparation mode as they continue to enjoy their most successful season in years, maybe decades. All right, so we're going to move on to my top 3 now. At 3, we're going with the Bronx Bombers, the New York Yankees. The Yankees actually do still have something to play for as they remain tied with the Astros for baseball's best record. They're going for that number 1 seed that would face the wild card winner instead of the third best division winner, which I think right now is the Minnesota Twins. Let's just put this stat out there right now. Against everyone in the league, 30 teams, besides the Baltimore Orioles, they are 78-49, which is great. In their 19 games against the Orioles, they are 18-1 against the Orioles. That is the best record against any team this year. For any team. Now, top 2. For Astros fans, they're going to love to hear this, but number 2 is the Los Angeles Dodgers. The first team to clinch a playoff berth this season is the Dodgers. they had a pretty muted celebration because it is their 7th consecutive division title. They have lost the World Series 2 years in a row, so they are going to drop in my postseason rankings because, yeah, they have the experience, but they don't have that winning experience that the other teams have.
It's going to end up biting us.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And number 1, for all my guys down in Houston. The Houston Astros make number 1. They're getting hot at the right time. Their injuries have kind of fizzled out. It's possible that I could see Houston losing in October, but behind an historic offense and stars of the rotation, the scenarios for them to fall are becoming harder to imagine. Rookie of the Year, Jordan Alvarez, Alex Bregman, of course. George Springer was the MVP in the AL before Mike Trout obviously stepped it up. So those are my power rankings. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Broad and Pattison podcast. Any closing remarks?
I'm just excited for next week's edition already.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot to talk about probably again.
Yeah. And hopefully we're talking about an Eagles dub.
Yep, and I can't wait for Antonio Brown to get into another scandal. It's going to be hilarious. It was just like make an entire 10-minute video off of that.
Yeah, good.
Be on the lookout for that, by the way.
Yes, be on the lookout for that. And without further ado, go Birds, baby!